Well, hello. I'm Pastor Nanette Christofferson, and along with Pastor Steve Talmadge, we offer these short Bible studies on our lectionary readings. This week is known to be Holy Trinity Sunday, and our gospel reading comes from Matthew chapter 28, 16 to 20. Our commentary today is by Craig Koister from 2009. I'd like us to begin by thinking about the Holy Trinity. And I wish I could say, as I've written here, that the doctrine of the Holy Trinity is something that I'm able to speak in great detail about in a profound way. Unfortunately, though, the things that I come up with to explain the Trinity just doesn't seem quite worthy of it. For instance, oftentimes when explaining to children, this might help children understand it, but it doesn't bring the depth. I often use water to start with an element like water that is the same when it's frozen and is the same as a vapor, which is like God. God is the same as God's Son, Jesus, as God, the Holy Spirit. That might be a way to help grasp on to the idea, but the idea of three persons in one is not an easy one and has never been an easy one to teach. And yet it is key for us as Christians in our understanding of who God is and how God comes to us. Without the gift of the Holy Spirit, without the gift of the Son, that would change our perspective a lot on God and our understanding of God. So the Holy Trinity is very important to our foundation and understanding of who God is as Christians, but it doesn't mean it's easy to explain or understand. So let's take a look at a little bit of background in our gospel reading today. Matthew's gospel gives a vivid glimpse into what it means to be disciples of Jesus. The scenes before it that happen come with drama and struggle. The power of the resurrection seems clear in the account of the resurrection, as the earth shakes and an angel descends and rolls back the stone. The guards are overcome and the women are terrified, and the tomb is empty. This is definitely a different version than what we see in Mark's gospel, in John's gospel, and in Luke's gospel. Matthew's gospel, I think, brings an element of truth to the power of the resurrection and what happens when some people see Jesus and some people don't, or some people can see the exact same thing and still not believe. This passage to me is fascinating because of that. As we look to the angel's voice, it's one of command, for he tells the women to direct the disciples to Galilee, where they will see Jesus for themselves. Then, before the women can even repeat this, Jesus makes an appearance and tells the disciples that they should go to Galilee. But the plot thickens as rumors spread that none of this resurrection news was true, and the disciples were the ones who had stolen the body. Against this backdrop, our passage begins. So let's take a look at our reading today. Matthew 28, 16 to 20. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always till the end of the age." We often don't think of that this way, that faith and doubt characterize discipleship, but I think it's important that Matthew's gospel put that in there. The disciples who go to the mountain have not seen any of the Easter drama. They have not seen an earthquake or the angel descending. They have not seen the risen Jesus or heard his voice. Their reputations are soon to be tarnished by rumors that they have perpetrated a hoax to get others to believe that Jesus is alive. All they have is the directive from the women, "Go to Galilee." So they go, trudging northward from Jerusalem to Galilee, not knowing whether the women's word is true, to set out on this journey into an unforeseen future with only a word. This characterizes discipleship. Jesus does encounter the disciples as he promised, but the response is mixed. When the travelers meet the living Jesus, some worship, others doubt. Both responses are possible from the same group. Among these disciples, there is both worship and uncertainty, both devotion and hesitancy. One might expect something clear and unequivocal. They are in the presence of the living Christ, after all. But this mixture of faith and doubt also characterizes discipleship. And if we think about this, we probably understand this from our own experience as well. We too are called to go to where Jesus will meet us. We too are called to worship. We are directed to the place where we will meet the living Christ. Yet one wonders, why would anyone listen? Perhaps it is the hope that the message might be true, and that by coming to the community where Jesus promises to meet people, he might meet us as well. So we come to see if Christ will keep his promise. And as disciples of a God that's far bigger in our understanding than we can possibly imagine, we too are to bring our doubts. We trust that he comes as he said he would. And for many in our community, this is reason for thanks and worship, making confession, offering prayers, voicing our faith, singing our praise, all of this worship in the presence of the living Christ. And along with the worship, many continue to wonder whether any of this is true. Yet like the first disciples, we bring our doubts to the place where Jesus promises to meet us. And this too is discipleship. So how does Jesus respond to this mixed group of worshipers and doubters? He gives them all the same commission: go and make disciples. The command to go is what brought these disciples here to Jesus, and the command to go is what will take these disciples out to others. One might have expected Jesus to do something else, like calling for the certain to get things, for the uncertain to get things figured out, and for the hesitant to get their answers, their unanswered questions answered. But instead, Jesus simply speaks to them all in the same way: go and make disciples. They are again being called into the unseen future, since there is no guarantee that anyone will listen. Nonetheless, the word is go. It's an interesting scene, isn't it, to put ourselves into, to think about if we were part of that original group. And by disciples, I mean more than the original 11 that are now with Jesus in this ascension, in this resurrection story. If we were put ourselves in Jesus' day and one of the disciples, would we have some doubt? And I think we would. Would we really be seeing Jesus as the resurrected Lord? Maybe we would just know that all the teachings that he had taught us before this is what he meant. Maybe it will take us a while longer to really understand and let it all soak in that this is what Jesus meant. Anyway, Jesus tells us to go even with our doubts. And I think Jesus is really trying to show us that authenticity is the root of faith. Being authentic in your faith and in your doubts and not sure is part of the authenticity of being a disciple. Part of being a disciple, too, is sharing the ongoing invitation. And while we might look back and go, was it a good idea for Jesus to send out doubters and not have that special group where they all meet and talk things over? One wonders whether this is a good idea, to have this group of disciples who will not have their act together, going out to make other disciples. Jesus might have been more selective in whom he called and sent, but apparently Jesus sees things differently. These disciples whom he tells to go are in no position to make themselves the object of faith. That is the part of the good news, the invitation to follow Jesus. It's not an invitation to follow me or anyone else. It's an invitation to look to Jesus and follow him. Craig Koister writes, as he is the commentator on this, that when he was in college, a professor made some comments in one of his religion classes that prompted him to ask what he meant by the word authority. Perhaps it was one of those attempts by a college sophomore to press a point in a manner that sounded profound. Perhaps it reflected a genuine desire to grasp something that he had not fully understood. But the professor responded with a single word that brought a level of clarity that Craig had never thought of. And he hasn't forgotten it. He said, authority is followability. Followability. The professor probably coined the word on the spot. but it did what it needed to do. True authority is what gives people the confidence to follow. And this is what Jesus says about himself. No one can make anyone follow Jesus. What the disciples have is the word from the living Christ that continues beckoning them to follow. His promise is that I am always with you to the close of the age. How does one know in advance if this is true? The answer is that no one can know in advance. But the word keeps beckoning the worshipful and the doubtful into a path of discipleship. And it is along the way that Jesus will prove his word, his presence, to be true. So let's take a look at a few questions today. What is your experience with doubt and faith? How did God make God's own self known to you then? And both Pastor Steve and I have talked a lot about doubt and faith. And doubt is often what grows our faith. The questions that we bring are what grows our faith to become deeper. Oftentimes in our doubt, we might be thinking we're looking for God, but God shows up in a whole different way. And it's until we stop and reflect and see that God made God's own self known to us. Does it make a difference to you that there were those who doubted? It might. For me, the difference helps me. It helps me go, oh, Jesus is trusting in community, trusting in how the Holy Spirit works, trusting so that despite our doubts, we can still share this good news, which should bring us confidence in sharing good news. So who have you recently shared your faith with? And what difficulties do you have in sharing the good news of Jesus? Well, I pray that maybe you're reading this or listening to this in the morning and having a cup of coffee with me, or maybe it's sometime else in the day. But I pray as you journey with Jesus this week and think about the Great Commission, think about our doubts and our faith and how the Holy Trinity is an active part of our authenticity when it comes to following Jesus. Have a blessed day.